And of course that, some of Preston's work, he has correlated this August 12th runs in a 20-year cycle, a biorhythmic cycle of the Earth, where there is a peaking out of this information, sort of like a resonance. And that goes along, all these bits of information seem to hold together. Let's see, right. So...
How about in the aspect of the experiments that dealt in mind manipulation? I mean, to what extent what was your involvement in that?
Well, recently I've come to kind of an understanding and settling that the process of this connection, certainly metaphysics, time is all connected. The past, present, future is interconnected. And those people who can access it more than the typical sense ever does, or psychic or sensitive or has capabilities out of the
There's an electromagnetic connection.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You're very much electromagnetic based here. Being involved in the Philadelphia experiment in this time phenomenon and jumping and right along the time framework for which we're now involved in here. I would have the potential capabilities to do the psychic work on a bigger potential than most people would. So coming from the 40s into the 80s, and then having to process one of the times that for some reason I lost my time reference, and the body aged very dramatically and ended up for some reason back in the 60s. For reasons, I guess it makes sense. We figured within that 20-year cycle of 43, 63, 83. And curiously enough, there's all sorts of tests that Preston has where he and I can validate consideration of things that I do know and figure as a reference of sort. In the early 60s, I don't identify with much of everything. It goes along with the half a dozen or 5 or 6 different memories I have before the age of 13.
That are all different? Or
Sorry?
what?
No, it's just basic memories of childhood that are just not there for reasons not known.
Okay.
But the process of what Preston earlier spoke about, these random thought processes that occurred in different aspects of time, as with the can of beer, it would be a natural phenomenon for the psyche, which had been actually exposed to the esoteric in a broader way than most people, to almost play, go out, take a job and just see what happens, put it out, as in the supposedly the evolution of the human spirit to go into these different realms, which the human spirit does have a natural connection to, all these alternate and the timeline and stuff. But to given a work duty, just kind of do it on almost an experimental, the creation aspect of it without being contained, and therefore the kind of the advent of the time experiments, which ended up in certainly the mundane to the phenomenon of going and jumping planets and moving into different time zones, of which, as I say, it's a natural occurrence that everyone has, and
that we haven't realized.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
The human spirit is so very connected, and supposedly that's some of the interests of the ET groups, that the human spirit that we're evolving in this process has such a vast number of emotions with it. In the love, I hate you, it's so very evident in a child, in that they don't understand that. It's so very extreme in nature, and of course that extremity is part of creation, in that hopping back between the 2 points, there's all sorts of room for doing work and such. So, one of the unusual characteristics in this jumping in time and seeing where the particular special interest groups, and that's basically what Montauk was about, very specialized interest groups within the government, outside, finding a way to accentuate and to gear and maneuver their own sense of for whatever their agenda is. There was a test at Montauk for those people who could sense in this time framework, which we're all moving along, to the year 6037. Sounds kind of kooky and bizarre and unusual, but we all have a connection to our evolution. And that's supposedly one of the most evolved states of the human spirit in the time framework that moving along. If everyone has a connection to it, and there is enough kind of horsepower or a process to move it in that area, then could be on paper connected. And it probably was a bit of a jolt and such, but they had these connections, and part of the work duties of some of these volunteers were to go in and sense this horse on a pedestal, which in this kind of surrealistic city, and some of the people had the creativity and the how do I say, and the ability to actually ride the horse. Get on this horse and then follow it and see where it ended up. And it, from reports, it ended up before Christ, millions of years. And along that pathway, they had a number of what's called flag posts, which for some reason has been connected with me. I don't quite know why, but there is my essence in connection with these flag posts.
Markers along the way?
Markers in time, same thing. And we're speculating. We certainly don't know, because we're still trying to grab memories and see what comes up. And by all means, Al Bielek, my half-brother, is part of this investigation group, trying to put it all together as to what these references in time means. And the logical aspect is that the control group would like to use these forms for their agenda. It's a logical format. So that was one of the peculiar aspects of it. Some of the other unfortunate considerations were the use of boys in the project.
What age?
Goes back to 5 and 6 at the earliest, maybe 7 and 8, through pubescent into 17 and 18. And they had some 20-year-olds at the time.
And how were they used?
They were used in researching their connection into their natural connection into ESP, and where it went involved. And what's kind of interesting and sad is that recently I've come to the conclusion, and certainly always been there, that a person's sexuality and ESP travels the same avenue. We're not necessarily talking about the physical aspect of it, but the energetic part of it. As with a person who, let's say, dams everything in sight, they would be somewhat cloistered in onto themselves instead of forgiving and almost talking to trees, sort of thing, to be corny. That flow of energy and graciousness is part of what the group at Montauk were researching.